Welcome to PBS 39's Scholastic Scrimmage. Scholastic Scrimmage is brought to you by the members of PBS 39 and by...
Scholastic Scrimmage is sponsored by St. Luke's University Health Network, the region's leading provider of medical education. For more than 100 years, St. Luke's has been dedicated to educating physicians, nurses, and healthcare professionals. To learn more, call St. Luke's InfoLink, toll free at 866 St. Luke's, or visit sluhn.org.
Support for PBS 39's educational programming is provided by the Deluxe Corporation Foundation, proud to support quality programming on PBS 39.
Scholarships provided by the Air Products Foundation. And now, here's your host, Joe Pacetti.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Scholastic Scrimmage on PBS 39. I'm your host, Joe Pacetti, and my family has been mispronouncing our last name since they arrived at Ellis Island. Last week, I presented you, humble audience, with some trivia that I found particularly striking. I'd like to continue this tradition today prior to the start of our contest. 1. Our 50-star flag was originally designed by a high school student for a class project in Ohio. His teacher gave him a B-. 2. After leaving office, Lyndon Johnson let his hair grow out. Yes, it's image search worthy. 3. Sean Connery turned down the role of Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings films, saying that after reading the books and the scripts, he, quote, still didn't understand it. 4. E.B. White, author of Charlotte's Web, was also the White in Strunk and White, authors of the indispensable The Elements of Style. And at the beginning of every episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, the stoplight is always yellow. This is a reminder for kids and parents to slow life down a little and savor moments together. Hopefully these factoids don't give anything away in today's contest between the Southern Lehigh Spartans and the Palmerton Blue Bombers. Let's meet the team, starting with Southern Lehigh.
Hello, my name is Temple Coldren, and I'm a senior.
Hello, my name is Andrew Bonanno, and I'm a senior.
Hi, I'm Sana Gold, and I'm a junior.
Hi, I'm Tommy Patterson, and I'm a senior.
Southern Lehigh's coaches are Jennifer Vletic and Beth Daughtery. Now the team from Palmerton.
Hi, I'm Hannah Nestfeder, and I'm a senior.
Hi, my name is Colby Moyer, and I'm a senior.
Hi, I'm Corey Kratzer, and I'm a senior.
Hi, I'm Crosby Rayvert, and I'm a senior.
Palmerton's coach is Alex Knoll. Our judges for today's contest are Sally Campbell, Gary DeLeo, and Kathleen Steele. At the end of the season, the two final teams will win scholarships for their schools from the Air Products Foundation. To our audience, this contest requires rapid recall of facts and favors the resolute. Performances on this stage are not necessarily reflective of these students' academic experiences. And remember, it's always easier to be an armchair quizmaster than a competitor in this arena. We understand the rules, so let's begin the contest with a toss-up. The An Lushan Rebellion took place during what Chinese dynasty, a golden age that lasted from 618 to 907, and saw Li Bo and Du Fu write poetry? Palmerton.
The Qin Dynasty.
Incorrect. Question goes over to Southern Lehigh.
The Han Dynasty.
That is incorrect. The Tang Dynasty was the dynasty we were looking for there. Toss-up. What German mathematician is the namesake of a method of matrix row reduction or elimination and of the bell-shaped normal distribution? Gauss. Southern Lehigh. Gauss. Gauss is the correct response. And your bonus, King Richard the Lionheart led what crusade lasting from 1189 to 1192 that retook Acre and Jaffa, but failed to recapture Jerusalem from Saladin?
Okay. I think it's, yeah, go. If you know it, do it. No,
Yeah, I think.
Yep, Sana.
Say it.
If you know it.
What?
Yeah, Sana, if you guys know the response after your consultation, the captain will have to ring in, okay? Yeah. The Third Crusade was what we were looking for on that bonus. Yeah. Toss-up. Current president of the European Council, Donald Tusk, was once prime minister of what country, now governed by the Law and Justice Party in Warsaw? Palmerton.
Poland.
Poland is correct. And your bonus. What number is the third Fibonacci number and the smallest prime number? Colby.
2.
2 is correct. Toss-up. The Halfpenny Bridge and the O'Connell Street area are in what city on the River Liffey? That is this capital and the most populous city in the Republic of Ireland. Southern Lehigh is Dublin, and your bonus. What river, whose sources include the Opalescent River and the Lake Tyr of the Clouds, is crossed by the Tappan Zee Bridge?
Brooklyn Bridge. Go to,
wait, are we asking for the bridge?
We were looking for the river, the Hudson River.
Oh.
Yeah, the
Hudson River. Toss-up. What philosopher who defined beauty as purposiveness without purpose in the third of his critiques is best known for his critique of pure reason? And that philosopher is Immanuel Kant, is what we were looking for. This question is a visual. Your attention up on the monitor, please. Pencil and paper ready. What is the smallest possible positive output of the secant function, giving that secant of x equals 1 over cosine of x? Southern Lehigh.
1.
1 is correct. And your bonus is also a visual. Keep your pencils ready. What is the length of either diagonal of the square whose vertices are at the points 1, 1, 1, 6, 6, 6, and 6, 1? We're looking for 5 times the square root of 2, or 5 root 2, or 5 radical 2. Any of those would have been appropriate. Toss up. What poet who wrote the line that no country is for old men in Sailing to Byzantium proclaimed that things fall apart in the second coming? William Butler Yeats was the correct response. Toss-up. What Roman emperor supposedly saw a Cairo sign in the sky before the Battle of Milvian Bridge, which inspired him to legalize Christianity? Southern Lehigh.
Constantine.
Constantine is correct, and your bonus. Pairs of male lovers formed what ancient Greek city's sacred band, which contributed to a defeat of the Spartans at the Battle of Leuctra?
Because they thought they would fight better together. It's like something with a T.
Names.
Thermopylae.
It did start with the T. Thebes was what we were looking for. Close. Toss up. What man who invents Scream in a Box while running Carter Pewterschmidt's business owns a dog named Brian and is the protagonist? Palmerton.
Peter Griffin.
Peter Griffin is correct. And your bonus. What quantity for a solution which appears in the equation for freezing point depression is equal to the moles of solute per mass of solvent? Colby.
22.4.
Incorrect. Molality is what we were looking for there. Not a number.
Lightning round!
At the beginning of the contest, we had a coin toss to determine who would go first, and Palmerton won that coin toss. So I'll read 2 categories for you guys. You'll select one of those. You'll have 1 minute to answer as many questions as possible. If you don't know a response, please ring in and say pass. Anybody can ring in, but you need to wait for me to acknowledge you. Okay, so I'll just look at you. Your 2 categories are I in science and literary lovers. Science, very good. So this is I in science. You're going to give these science terms that begin with the letter I. Bonds in which electrons are transferred from one atom to another.
Ionic.
Correct. Last part of the small intestine.
Pass.
Term for any species lacking a backbone.
Invertebrate.
Correct. Tendency of a body at rest to stay at rest.
Isaac's first law of motion. Third.
Incorrect. Atoms of the same atomic number but different masses.
Isotopes.
Correct. Element added to salt to prevent goiter.
Iodine.
Correct. Process also known as anti-differentiation.
Pass.
Study of fish.
Pass.
Lines on a weather map connecting points at the same pressure.
Pass.
The product of a real number and the square root of -1.
I or imaginary number.
Correct. Okay, so that's all of our questions. Inertia, by the way, is what we were looking for the one that we were one. And it needed to be specifically inertia. Okay, so Southern Lehigh, that means your category is literary lovers, for better or worse. Apparently worse. So, again, same rules apply. Anybody can ring in. You'll have 1 minute to answer as many questions as you can. No conferring. Name the authors who created these literary couples. Viola and Duke Orsino.
Pass.
Agnes Wickfield and David Copperfield.
Charles Dickens.
Correct. Count Vronsky and Anna Karenina.
Pass.
Florentino Ariza and Fermina Daza.
Pass.
Amy March and Laurie Lawrence.
Pass.
Lady Rowena and Wilfred of Ivanhoe.
Pass.
Hiawatha and Minnehaha.
Pass.
Anton Cusack and Antonia Schmierda.
Pass.
George Emerson and Lucy Honeychurch.
Pass.
Oliver Mellers and Lady Constance Chatterley.
Pass.
That was all the questions. That was a difficult category. Difficult category.
I like the
Definitely not the
one.
I in science, I'll put it that way.
I like that one.
Okay. That's going to bring us back to our toss-ups. What novel, whose protagonist cares for Goblin and works for the Boston Observer, is an Esther Forbes book about a boy during the American Revolution? That is Johnny Tremaine, is the name of the book. Toss-up. What structure, built to be the entrance of the 1889 World's Fair, sits on the northwest Southern Lehigh?
Eiffel Tower.
Eiffel Tower is correct, and your bonus. What U.S. Senator from New York, who replaced Hillary Clinton in 2009, is an early contender for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination?
Oh, this isn't. No, because she's. Oh, it's Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren.
Buzz.
Elizabeth Warren.
That is incorrect. Kristen Gillibrand is what we're looking for. Toss-up. The charge stored on a capacitor equals the capacitance times what quantity, whose decrease across a resistor equals the resistance times the current? Palmerton.
Electromagnetivity.
That is incorrect. That will go over to Southern Lehigh.
Amperage.
Amperage is incorrect. Voltage or potential difference is what we were looking for. Toss-up. What man, who in January 2017 sued Hawaiian landowners over a property he bought in Kauai?
Mark Zuckerberg. That's right.
Southern Lehigh? Mark Zuckerberg is correct. And your bonus. The U.S. launched Operation Just Cause in 1989 to topple Manuel Noriega, the dictator of what Central American country?
This is Panama.
Panama.
Panama is correct. Apparently you were watching Narcos. That's good. Toss-up. What object, which was found by Pierce-François Bouchard and translated by Jean-François Champollion, is a rock that helped to decipher Palmerton?
Stone.
The Rosetta Stone is correct. And your bonus. What author of the 1997 book Dereliction of Duty, which criticized American policy in Vietnam, is the current national security advisor?
Kurt
Colby.
Vonnegut.
Incorrect. We were looking for H.R. McMaster. And that brings us to halftime. The score at the half is evenly tied. Southern Lehigh 80, Palmerton 80. Let's have a hand for our teams. At the break during each show, we like to take an opportunity to get to know more about our competitors. This week, we're going to find out what person, past or present, each of our contenders on stage would have dinner with and why. We'll start over here with Southern Lehigh.
I would have dinner with Hunter S. Thompson.
I would have dinner with like George Carlin, probably.
I would have dinner with William Shakespeare.
I'd have dinner with Larry David.
I like that one. None of those needed an explanation, I don't think. So that was good. Palmerton, over to you.
I would have dinner with Jesus.
I'd have dinner with Ronald Reagan.
I would have dinner with Nikola Tesla.
I would have dinner with Isaac Newton.
Okay, outstanding. A very diverse group of people there. Interesting dinner guests. Larry David and Jesus would be particularly interesting to see. We will go. What's that?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I wasn't scalding you. I was legitimately interested in what you had to say. That's okay. Let's go back to toss-up, shall we? What property can result from the cohesion caused by hydrogen bonds, causes liquid drops to form spheres, and allows some insects to walk on water? Southern Lehigh.
Surface tension.
That is correct. And your bonus, Nag and Nell emerged from dustbins in Endgame, a play by what Irish author who depicted the reminiscences of an elderly man in Krapp's Last Tape?
Jumanji. Yeah, Jumanji. I'd say it.
Don't say it.
It is not Jumanji. It's actually Samuel Beckett. Samuel Beckett is what we were looking for. Toss up. What Italian artist painted La Disputa, which is found in the Stanza della Signoria, across from the fresco of ancient thinkers, the School of Athens? That would be Raphael. That's what we were looking for, not the Ninja Turtle. And your toss-up. What conflict in which Henry VI was taken prisoner after the First Battle of St. Albans was fought between the houses of York and Lancaster? Southern Lehigh.
The War of the Roses.
That is correct. And your bonus. What colorfully named river has its source in the Drakensberg Mountains and is the longest river in South Africa? That would be the Orange River. The Orange River. Toss up. What hip hop duo claimed to be, quote, still on a paper chase that don't ever stop in their song Swang, and also recorded the 2016 single Black Beatles?
Ray Shremmerd.
That is correct. Thank you for not making me say that. And your bonus. The 1997 and 1999 NBA MVP was what power forward who spent his first 18 years in the league with the Utah Jazz and was nicknamed the Mailman?
Larry Bird.
Larry Bird is incorrect. We were looking for Karl Malone, was the Mailman. Toss-up. What structures, which have barbs and barbules, are called pins when developing, make up the layer of down, and cover the bodies of birds? Southern Lehigh.
Feathers.
Feathers is correct. And your bonus. Reflecting telescopes are free of what type of aberration, which results from the failure of a lens to focus all colors in the same plane?
Yeah. Glare. Go nuts.
Santa.
Glare.
Glare is incorrect. Chromatic aberration was what we were looking for. Toss-up. What author's story collection, Go Down Moses, which includes his novella about a bear named Old Ben, is set in the fictional Yonkapoatha County? Also the author of The Sound and the Fury, William Faulkner. That's what we were looking for. Toss-up. What city, which was incorporated on the Buffalo Bayou in 1837, is home to the Johnson Space Center, is the most populous city in Texas? Southern Lehigh.
Houston.
Houston is correct. And your bonus. The naive Prince Mishkin tries to navigate 19th century Russian society in what author's novel, The Idiot?
Tolstoy. Just fine. Tolstoy.
Santa.
Tolstoy.
Tolstoy is incorrect. It is the other one, Dostoevsky. That's the other one we was forgetting. Yeah. Toss-up. Conservation of energy is the first law of what branch of physics, which states, Southern Lehigh?
Thermodynamics.
That is correct. And your bonus. In what film do Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman star as two Washington Post reporters who break the Watergate scandal?
Magical fun Christmas. Fire anything.
All the President's Men, not Pulp Fiction. Definitely not Pulp Fiction. It was All the President's Men. Our next toss-up is a video question. Your attention to the monitor, please.
What tool, often used to make axisymmetric items like baseball bats, is a woodworking machine that rapidly spins a workpiece along its axis of rotation?
Lathe.
Lathe is correct. And your bonus. What type of market structure, which can act like a monopoly when collusion occurs, exists when a small group of firms dominate a market?
A trust.
A trust is incorrect. We would be looking for oligopoly. That's the correct response there. Toss-up. What author described Hans Castorp's love for Claudia Kauschat in an alpine sanatorium in the Magic Mountain and also wrote the novel Dr. Faustus? Palmerton.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
That is incorrect. Question goes over to Southern Lehigh.
The Secret Garden.
Incorrect. We're looking for the author, Thomas Mann, who also didn't write the... Yeah, he didn't write that either. That's okay. Toss-up. The trickster gods Ikotomi and Anansi both commonly appear in the form of what small animal into which Athena transformed Southern Lehigh?
Spider.
Spider is correct, and your bonus. A woody plant sacrifices herself so that a boy can build things like a house and a boat. In what story by Shel Silverstein?
It's like the tree.
Sana.
The Giving Tree.
The Giving Tree is correct. Toss-up. What editor of the newspaper The People's Friend and Jacobin supporter was killed in his bath by Charlotte Corday during the French Revolution? We were looking for Jean-Paul Marat. Jean-Paul Marat. Toss-up. Before his 1961 suicide, what author of Death in the Afternoon gave a Ketchum, Idaho resident a manuscript copy of his novel For Whom the Bell Tolls? Ernest Hemingway was the correct response. Toss-up. What organ is surrounded by Gleison's capsule, is made of hepatocytes, and is damaged in cirrhosis? Southern Lehigh.
Liver.
Liver is correct. And your bonus. Mammals and birds belong to what animal phylum, whose members must possess a notochord?
It is.
Invertebrate.
Sana? Invertebrate is incorrect. Chordata is what we were looking for, or chordates.
Lightning round!
So for the second lightning round, Southern Lehigh, you will get to select first of the first two categories, okay? Same rules apply. We have 1 minute, no conferring. Your two options are state capitals and sports in movies.
State capitals.
State capitals is the one you want to choose. All right. Outstanding. Okay, for state capitals, you'll name the U.S. state capital given a clue about the person or thing with which it shares its name. Okay. The fourth president.
Pass.
Appalachee word meaning old town.
Pass.
Captain of the Santa Maria.
Columbus.
Correct. Capital of New Hampshire, named for the concept of peace or harmony.
Prosperity.
Incorrect. Native American people whose chiefs included Black Kettle.
Pass.
19th century Prussian chancellor.
Pass.
English town with notable white cliffs.
Dover.
Correct. Mythical bird born from its own ashes.
Phoenix.
Correct. Setting of Arthur Miller's The Crucible.
Salem.
Correct. English explorer who founded the now lost Roanoke colony.
Jamestown.
Incorrect. Raleigh was the last one we were looking for. Okay, so that is all in that category. So Palmerton, sports and movies. Okay, 1 minute, no conferring. What sport is the focus of these movies? Hoosiers.
Pass.
Field of Dreams.
Baseball.
Correct. Secretariat.
Horse racing.
Correct. Friday Night Lights.
Football.
Correct. Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby.
NASCAR racing.
That is correct. The Fighter.
Boxing.
Correct. Chariots of Fire.
Chariot racing.
Incorrect. Miracle.
Football.
Incorrect. Whip It.
Pass.
The Legend of Bagger Vance.
Baseball.
Incorrect. Golf was the last one we were looking for. But you got the Talladega Nights one, so that was good. That was a good one. Exactly. All right. It's going to bring us back to our toss-ups. What war, whose strategic Hamlet program was discussed in the Pentagon Papers, featured bombing in Cambodia and ended with the fall of Saigon? Palmerton.
Vietnam.
Vietnam is correct in your bonus. In 2006, head of state Thuan Chue moved the capital of Myanmar from Yangon to what planned city? Naypyidaw was what we were looking for. Toss-up. What female name is shared by the capital of Seychelles, the capital of British Columbia, and a waterfall along the border of Zambia? Southern Lehigh.
Victoria.
Victoria is correct, and your bonus. Milkman Dead jumps from a cliff and possibly achieves flight at the end of what Toni Morrison novel, which is named for a book of the Old Testament?
I feel like we're just going to go Revelations. Go Revelations.
Sana.
Revelations.
Incorrect. Song of Solomon is what we're looking for. Toss-up. What instrument played by Sonny Rollins and Giant Steps composer John Coltrane is a curved woodwind instrument that is usually made of brass? Palmerton. Saxophone is correct. And your bonus, what state, which was governed after the Civil War by former General Ambrose Burnside, was the last of the 13 colonies to ratify the Constitution? Colby.
Georgia.
Incorrect. Rhode Island was the correct response. Toss-up. Using kinetic theory, Rudolf Clausius derived what law that ignores molecular size and intermolecular retraction and is commonly stated as PV equals nRT?
Ideal
Southern
gas,
Lehigh.
ideal gas law.
Ideal gas law is correct. And your bonus, in 1794, what American inventor received a patent for the mechanical cotton gin? Senna.
Eli Whitney.
Eli Whitney is correct. Toss-up. Future Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter wrote an article on the case of what two Italian-American anarchists who were executed in 1927. And that would be Sacco and Vanzetti. Toss-up. What island inhabited by the Dayak people contains the Kalimantan and Sarawak provinces and is divided between Brunei, Malaysia, and Indonesia? Southern Lehigh.
Jakarta.
Incorrect. Question will go over to Palmerton.
The Philippines.
Incorrect. Borneo was the response. Toss-up. Talc polymerase is used in PCR to copy what long molecule that is made up of 4 nitrogenous bases? Southern Lehigh.
DNA.
DNA is correct. And your bonus, in June 2017, gunmen attacked a resort in Bamako, which is the capital of what West African nation?
Yeah, just go with Cameroon.
Sana.
Cameroon.
Incorrect. Mali was the correct response. Toss-up. What man who worked with Rustichello da Pisa to transcribe his stories met Kubla Khan on his travels to Asia, which he recorded in Il Milione? Southern Lehigh.
Marco Polo.
That is correct. And your bonus, the Latin phrase lux et veritas, which means light and truth, is the motto of what Ivy League university, whose alumni include George W. Bush? Sana.
Harvard.
Incorrect. Yale was the correct response. Toss-up. In November 2015, Robert Deere attacked a clinic in Colorado Springs run by what organization? Palmerton. Planned Parenthood is correct in your bonus. The subtitle of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein calls the main character a modern version of what mythical figure who was unbound in a Percy Shelley play? Colby.
Dr. Frankenstein's monster.
Incorrect. Prometheus. Toss-up. What poet wrote that the sight of white eyes writhing would deter a friend from telling the old lie in the World War I poem Dulce et Decorum Est? Wilfred Owen was the correct response to that question. That's going to bring us to the end of our contest. The final score is Southern Lehigh 255, Palmerton 165. Congratulations to Southern Lehigh on their victory. It's always a pleasure to watch the best and the brightest showcase their immense talents, and we wish Palmerton the best of luck in their academic endeavors. On behalf of Scholastic Scrimmage and PBS 39, thank you for your continued support and viewership. Though they may be at times teams of rivals, one truth remains: you can't beat brains.
Scholastic Scrimmage is brought to you by the members of PBS 39 and by
Scholastic Scrimmage is sponsored by St. Luke's University Health Network, the region's leading provider of medical education. For more than 100 years, St. Luke's has been dedicated to educating physicians, nurses, and healthcare professionals. To learn more, call St. Luke's InfoLink, toll free at 866 St. Luke's, or visit sluhn.org.
Support for PBS 39's educational programming is provided by the Deluxe Corporation Foundation, proud to support quality programming on PBS 39.
This program is recorded at the PPL Public Media Center at PBS 39 in Bethlehem.